Thank you very much for joining us this morning for this important federal and provincial transit funding announcement today in Hamilton. My name is Maureen Cousin-Heath, and I am the Director of Transit for the City of Hamilton. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that the City of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Niueschwaway to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered between the Lakes Purchase, 1792, between the Crown and the Mississaugas and the Credit First Nation. Today, the City of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, North America, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our role as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. Our speakers for today's events are the Honourable Filomena Tassi, Minister of Labour and Member of Parliament for Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas. The Honourable McKenna, Minister of Infrastructure and Communities. Stan Cho, the Associate Minister of Transportation, Transit-Oriented Communities, and His Worship, Fred Eisenberger, the Mayor of Hamilton. Also joining us today are the City of Hamilton City Manager, Jeanette Smith, the General Manager of City of Hamilton's Public Works Department, Dan McKinnon, City staff, and members of the media. Welcome, everyone. I also want to mention that this event is being live streamed by Cable 14 to the City's YouTube channel, Inside the City of Hamilton. I would now like to invite the Honourable Filomena Tassi, Minister of Labour and Member of Parliament from Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas, to deliver her remarks.
Thanks, Mayor, for leading off with those applause. Listen, good morning, everyone. It's absolutely fantastic to be here this morning for this important announcement. Thanks, Maureen, for beginning with that lovely land acknowledgement. Really important that we begin that way. And I want to, of course, extend a warm welcome to Minister McKenna, with whom I've had the pleasure of recently announcing the Hamilton Light Rail Transit Project from McMaster to Eastgate. We all know that we've faced unprecedented challenges together during this COVID pandemic. Ontario communities like those all across Canada need help, and we need to continue to support them, and that's exactly what we have been doing. Strategic investments in public transit are critical to building communities where residents can thrive. Efficient public transit helps people get to where they need to go and access essential services. Today's projects will further transform Hamilton's transit system and offer more convenience and sustainable options for its users and residents. I do want to take a moment to thank Minister McKenna. She has been a tireless advocate for this community. It is an absolute pleasure to work with her day in and day out. I can tell you when I'm in the House of Commons and Hamilton comes out, what she fondly refers to as the hammer, she's the first one in the House that's on her feet, giving my comments a standing ovation. So, Catherine, it's been absolutely fantastic. We appreciate so much your support for this community and for communities all across the country. We're really excited about today's announcement. So please welcome the Honourable McKenna.
Whoops, the hazards of a mask and earrings. I'm thrilled to be here. I like the fact that after my title, it's like Minister of Infrastructure and Communities and also proud Hamiltonian. I also want to acknowledge the land on which we're situated. There's a great announcement later today at the Woodlands Cultural Centre. I hope you'll all tune in. I think it's on all of us to help with reconciliation. It's very hard. It's been, I think, a very hard time for Indigenous peoples, but a real wake-up call for Canadians. And I did not know about the Mohawk Indian Residential School, which is 34 kilometers from my home, where I grew up in Hamilton. And I think it's a real opportunity to learn about a very challenging time in our history and the horrific impacts of residential schools. So really encourage everyone to tune in. Well, I'm glad to be back in the Hammer, as I say. It's great because it means that I get to see my parents, but it also means that we're making more investments. Hamilton is an amazing city. It's an ambitious city, and it's a growing city. And these investments that the federal government is making, they're making a real difference in the lives of Hamiltonians. A huge shout out to Phil, because it is true, I always stand in the House of Commons as soon as she mentions Hamilton, folks of Hamilton and things we're doing in Hamilton, but also to Mayor Eisenberger. We've worked very closely together. Often you're telling me about different things that we should be investing in to support the city, to support the residents, and it's been a great partnership. And you can't get things done without working between different levels of government. So of course that's the city, but also Stan. It's great to be with you here today, working with the province. It's not always easy, different levels of government, but we owe it to folks to get things done. I could talk about all the investments we've made in Hamilton. We have made a lot. I'm a swimmer, as folks know, so I was here looking at the shoreline investments that we've made. It's quite astonishing how the harbor, but the broader shoreline has been cleaned up. We've made really important investments in terms of resilience, because climate change is having an impact, including here. I'm just really proud to see that folks are swimming in the waters, and it's becoming a huge feature, the Hamilton Harbor and beyond. I love going for walks downtown, but we've also made really important investments across a whole range of areas. So $50 million to each Stelco and Dofasco. Hamilton is still a steel town. It does a lot of other things, but that's really important investments in folks' lives, in jobs. Investments in affordable housing. I think there was $100 million invested just recently to upgrade housing facilities so those who need it most have good housing. There's more to do always, but we're very focused on that. In terms of the infrastructure program, it's funny when people tell me things that were done. The Bonetto Community Center, where I used to swim as a kid, upgrades there, the Dundas Community Pool, improvements to the Royal Botanical Gardens, upgrades to the Ancaster Fairgrounds. Haven't been there for a long time. I think that was high school, really. But over $300 million invested in 60 projects across Hamilton. And then, of course, there was the investment in the Hamilton LRT. That was $1.7 billion invested by the federal government, $3.4 billion when you talk about the investment with the province. That's a transformational investment in public transit. And why does that matter? Because good public transit does three things. I always like saying, I'm a mom, you can't waste taxpayer dollars. So every taxpayer dollar has to, one, create jobs, good jobs and economic growth. And you've heard this from Joe Mancinelli from LiUNA. He's talked about every single dollar you invest in the LRT will return $5. That's jobs to businesses. That's jobs across the city. That's also tax dollars, which I know the mayor likes getting, because it means that the city can do more investments. Two, we need to tackle climate change. I don't need to tell folks, we've seen the impacts of climate change. I was just in BC. The town of Lytton basically burned down in the matter of hours. That there's going to be huge air quality challenges across BC this summer. There are hundreds of fires burning, but we're seeing the impacts everywhere. You look at Europe, huge flooding, where in Germany they had rains that were equivalent to 2 months' rains in a day. That we need to tackle climate change. Emissions from transportation are 25% of our emissions. Third, we need to make sure we're building more inclusive communities. Let's be clear about who takes transit. It's folks who do not have other options often. It's often women, children, young people going to school, new immigrants. And that's supporting communities, vibrant communities, and we want to make transit an irresistible option. So that's why today I am very thrilled to announce that we're investing over $200 million in Hamilton's public transit system. That's in addition to the $1.7 billion that we invested in LRT. This is where everyone cheers. So what is this investment? Of course we need LRT here in Hamilton, but we also need better transit across the board. This is about the BLAST network. That's a hugely ambitious transit plan that the city came up with. We support local decision making. This funding is going to support 7 projects, including improvements to the A-Line rapid transit corridor. That's from the waterfront to the airport. That means also new buses, construction of new bike paths. We need to help people get around in clean ways, as well as new sidewalks. And I really appreciate the ambition here, that we need to connect Hamiltonians from the lower city to the mountain, from the waterfront to the airport. We need good transit across the board, and that is exactly what we are investing in. Alors moi, je suis très ravie aujourd'hui d'annoncer que le gouvernement du Canada investit plus de 200 millions de dollars dans le réseau de transport en commun de Hamilton. Ces fonds serviront à financer 7 projets, notamment l'amélioration du couloir de transport en commun rapide de la ligne A, l'achat de nouveaux autobus et la construction de nouvelles pistes cyclables et nouveaux trottoirs. Building on our historic investment in Hamilton LRT, these projects will reduce commute times, help workers, students, seniors, and families across Hamilton and beyond get to where they need to go in faster, cleaner, and more affordable ways. We'll create good jobs, make public transit an irresistible option, take more cars off the road, and reduce emissions in the fight against climate change. Strong partnerships are critical for good transit projects. We look forward to continuing to work with the city, the province, and other partners to get the public transit that Hamiltonians deserve. And I know Filomena says this, stay tuned, because there will be more announcements. That we believe in Hamilton, we believe in the ambition in the city, and we're going to continue to invest here because it is making a real difference in the lives of Hamiltonians. Thank you. Merci.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much, Maureen and Ministers Tassi, McKenna, and Mayor Eisenberger for joining us this morning. It's a real honor to be back in the Hammer. I haven't been here in a while. I got to say, it's changed a lot since I was here last. This city is bursting at the seams, and that's why today's announcement is so timely. And it's also an example of what we can do after decades of delay in transit in the city of Hamilton when governments work together at multiple levels across party lines and collaborate. This is what can happen, and this is a great day for the people of Hamilton. Province is contributing over $168 million. That's going to mean really awesome technology here. When CNG buses, 92 improved buses, and 85 new additions to the fleet. This is real, tangible progress for the commuters in Hamilton. I think Minister McKenna's right when she says that this connects people who need it the most, to their jobs, to an economy. This is more than just transit, and that's part of Premier Ford's vision, that it's important to connect the grid, to make sure that we get people moving, but it's important to also think about economic development and job creation, because that's what it's about as well. The last 16 months has been incredibly difficult on the people of Hamilton and, of course, across the world. But when we get through COVID-19, and I know that it's very close to being in our rearview mirror, and I really look forward to that day, it's going to be jurisdictions across the planet that are competing for that edge, that economic edge, for job creators to root in their neighborhoods. And so investments like this are crucial in making sure we position ourselves for that success down the road, looking around the corner to making sure that people are connected to the jobs out there, that we are investing into the economy, that we are making sure that we are fighting climate change through a greener fleet. And these investments are a step in that right direction. And so I'm honored to join everybody here this morning to the great city of Hamilton. I know I promised Mayor Eisenberger I wouldn't talk about football, so I'll steer clear of that contentious debate. The Argos go Argos, but certainly despite our sports allegiances, I think we can all agree that investing in a growing city, into the transit system of an amazing city here in Hamilton is an absolutely crucial step, and it's the right thing to do to make sure that we invest into the future. Of course, we're also continuing these investments. Minister McKenna and Minister Tassi mentioned the collaboration on the $3.4 billion to deliver our government's vision of an LRT here in Hamilton. And I know that we are shovel-ready on this project, and those discussions with Hamilton City Councillor and our wonderful mayor here continue. So we expect the results of our memorandum of understanding to be released later this year, which will announce the next steps in making sure that we get those shovels in ground, that Hamilton gets the LRT that it deserves, and we are connecting the grid here in the great city of Hamilton. With that said, it's my pleasure to introduce a great man who may have misguided football tastes, but the mayor of this great city of Hamilton, Mayor Eisenberger.
Well, good morning, and welcome to our second official live in-person announcement. The first one was actually transportation related as well. It was about bike share on past Friday, talking about the expansion of bike share, and today we're talking about the continuation and the development of our 10-year transit strategy, which this investment will allow us to advance now. Has been delayed for a couple of years because of the funding. Now we have our three-party municipal, federal, and provincial funding in place, and we can go full steam ahead in developing a much improved and much expanded wonderful transit system that every community and every city absolutely needs. So that's the structure, but there's a lot of people that put their shoulder to the wheel to make that happen. And let me start with Filomena Tassi, our Minister of Labour, a great Hamiltonian, the one that uses ambitious more than anyone, and fully believes it, as I do, that we have a great city and we need to make this city even greater. And you know, a good understanding that if you want to go fast on a project, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And certainly the federal government, provincial government, and municipal governments have come together to make this project happen. And a lot of that has to do with the great work of our Minister, Filomena Tassi. Great that she's running again. You're running again, right? Yeah, I thought so. You know what? And might I also say, before I get to the next person, that this federal government has done an absolutely fantastic job getting us through our pandemic. Hearing this morning that we lead the world in terms of vaccinations is an astounding achievement on behalf of our entire country. So please do pass on my gratitude to the Prime Minister and all those that had a part in that. It's been really quite the journey, and I am forever grateful for the work that's been done. Catherine McKenna, Minister McKenna, has been such a fierce contributor to our country, let alone to Hamilton and her home riding. You know, on issues of climate change, there was no one that's been louder and more vocal about the need to address climate change, and this is exactly what's happening here today. Advocating on behalf of women in our country, and certainly the rough ride she's received in her political career. I know, I hope I speak for most of you, that I am very disappointed that we're not going to have Catherine McKenna running in the next election. But I know that she's going to make her mark in many, many significant ways. She certainly, absolutely has made her mark in Hamilton. From the LRT funding a couple of weeks ago to the fulfillment of our transit plan, this is the fulfillment of everything the city has asked the federal provincial governments for. Total, complete success on all the asks around transit. And Minister McKenna, I can't thank you enough for not only your work here in Hamilton, but your work across the country. It's been absolutely outstanding, and I think she deserves a standing ovation and more. I'd like to think that Prime Ministership is in your future, but that's a personal decision for you. Minister Cho, you know, on behalf of the City of Hamilton, I want to thank you and Minister Mulroney and the Premier for their great work. Even though we had a bit of a bumpy ride through LRT and a couple of other issues, they came back around to finding a way of getting these projects back on the table and getting them funded, and it couldn't happen at a better time. So right now, economic stimulus, shovel-ready project, all of these projects that we're talking about today are all shovel-ready, ready to go. That's going to help stimulate not only public transportation in our community, but jobs. Jobs, and more jobs, and for LRT, more development as well, which then catapults us into another layer of jobs and taxes, as the minister has pointed out. So on behalf of the City of Hamilton, let me thank Dan McKenna, who has been leading our Public Works Division under which transit exists. I do have to mention Debbie Veladove that did a terrific job of bringing us a 10-year transit strategy with her team, with her transit team. And even though we had to forestall that a couple of years, it was now fully engaged and fully operational, and we can get moving more quickly. So Debbie did a terrific job. Debbie retired recently, and Maureen, I think, is going to take us to the next level. And this is really making you look exceptionally good, Maureen. Couple of weeks on the job, and you've landed every transit ask that we've ever asked for. So well done. Great job. So you can leave and then come back again, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. I do want to acknowledge Eric Tuck, who's been our ATU president and a great supporter of public transit in our community. And we've made an effort to ensure through this pandemic that all of our transit employees would continue to work and operate our system. And I think that was the right step to take. And all of these investments today, Eric, means more employees and more members for ATU. So this is transit growth that's going to benefit not only the transit union, but the community as a whole in a significant way. So on behalf of the City of Hamilton, I'll say one more time, thank you, ministers. Thank you for all this great work. All the best to you in the future, Minister McKenna. I'm sure we'll cross our paths. And thank you to our great staff that really put that 10-year transit plan in front of us to make it all happen. And I do want to acknowledge our not newly arrived, but since you've arrived, we've had challenges and major successes. And Jeanette Smith, our city manager, is doing an absolutely terrific job. So thank you all. Thank you.
Allow me to extend my thanks on behalf of the City of Hamilton to Ministers Tassi, Minister McKenna, Associate Minister Cho, and Mayor Fred Eisenberger for attending this morning. Your presence is very important to us, and we're very grateful for the funding we have received. As the Director of Transit for the City of Hamilton, I would also like to extend our sincerest thank you to the federal and provincial governments. This funding will allow us to support our re-envisioning of how transit is delivered and support a system redesign based on customer needs now and customer needs for years into the future, with customer-focused amenities and replacement and expansion buses and a new maintenance facility. These provide much-needed investments in our system and in our fleet, which in turn will allow Hamilton to grow and improve its transit service and continue to meet the commitments laid out in our 10-year strategy. I would now like to turn things over to Gemma Spatafora from Mayor Eisenberg's office to moderate a short media question and answer period.
Thank you, Maureen. I'd like to thank the media who's joined us this morning for the media Q&A. I'll call upon the media one at a time. When you're called upon, please state your name, the media outlet that you're from, and who your questions are directed to. Please keep your questions to two. It's one question with one follow-up. I invite the media to raise their hand now, and then we'll call upon you. Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you. So this investment covers 7 different transit initiatives, which include replacement and expansion buses. It will allow us to create connections on the A line and the B line, fully develop the BLAST network, and will also include a secondary maintenance facility, which will provide much needed storage and workspace for the additional buses that we require to deliver on the 10-year strategy. The buses will be ordered shortly for the replacement and the expansion. The design strategy is in place for building the secondary maintenance facility, and the investments will start hitting the streets for Hamiltonians very soon. As I am relatively new to the role, I'm not able to immediately speak to that specifically. I would like to call upon Jason Vanderhyde, who would be able to address that specific question. Jason?
Maintenance and storage facility, Matt.
Hi, Matt. If you could repeat the question, please. I couldn't hear from back there. So the design work on the maintenance storage facility in the Lower City is complete. We will be able to very quickly move towards getting it out to market for procurement on the work and intending hopefully by early next year to get into the construction phase.
And I know we're making that facility usable for electric buses at some point in the future. Is there some component of this funding that could be used in theory for electric buses going forward in future years?
Certainly, I think that with what remaining money there may be in the envelope for Hamilton, that could be a possibility. I believe there are some other funding streams specific to electric vehicles that could be leveraged for that as well. But the maintenance storage facility, as it's designed for construction and day one operations, will be designed to have future upfitting for electrification.
So the BLAST network and the 10-year strategy work in tandem to build upon the strong foundation of transit in Hamilton. So as we move forward, the money in the expansion buses will put more service on the road so that we can increase the size and frequency of the network to serve Hamilton. I'm not certain of the labor impact at this time. I believe as we're working through the development and design, those numbers will come once we figure out what the route configuration will be.
I keep hoping for early August, but it's in the hands of the province at the moment in terms of their process. So I can't always get what I want, but you know, soon. So you know, if it isn't August, I hope it's early September that we can get the MOU back on the table and hopefully approved and keep moving forward on the LRT project. As he slowly backed away from the mic.
Okay, that concludes our media Q&A. If media has any outstanding questions, I invite you to follow up with me afterwards. Maureen, I will pass it over to you.
Okay, so the ministers are invited to remain for a photo opportunity, and my apologies. This concludes our formal event. We've asked the ministers to stay behind for a photo opportunity. Thank you.
I know, I need like
I'm one of those sick guys who knows better than this one.
my parents have a pool here, that's where I'm going at.